Have you noticed how lately you find yourself immersed in a sea of distractions, unable to process the constant flow of digital information that surrounds us? Do you feel that your ability to concentrate is affected by a kind of fog that obscures your mind? Moreover, by spending so much time responding to messages in a compulsive, superficial manner, our social skills have deteriorated drastically, turning us into socially handicapped people. As the Stoic philosopher Seneca stated, "To speak much and without measure, is a sign of necessity." If things were said correctly, it would be enough to express them only once. Some use words as a shield to hide their insecurities, while others regret what they have said just moments after sharing it. There are also those who feel ignored, not receiving the attention and respect they deserve when they raise their voices in a group. In this sense, the Stoic Epictetus reminded us that we must keep in mind that what we ignore is much more than what we know. To tackle these two problems separately would already be a challenge in itself. But thanks to Stoic philosophy, there is a great solution that faces both problems simultaneously. Silence. Silence is the highest form of self-control and discipline, as the Stoic philosophers, such as Marcus Aurelius, pointed out. Silence is the most powerful echo of truth. A few months ago, overwhelmed by the constant noise, I decided to embark on a 7-day silent retreat. It was an experiment that radically transformed my way of living. During that time, I continued with my usual daily activities, went to work, played sports, did my shopping and so on. All this without uttering a single word. Or at least I humbly tried. In today's video, I would like to share with you my experience of a week of complete silence, and how, along with the reflections of Stoic philosophers and great thinkers, I highlighted in an outstanding way the great importance of silence. Something as simple as refraining from speaking can transform our lives. But before we begin, I would greatly appreciate it if you would like it, because in this way you help this philosophy to reach more people. If you don't want to miss any video, subscribe, and activate the little bell. This is Stoic Courage. Let's get started. We will start with the first utility of silence, which is precisely a perfect tool to improve our social relationships. As Seneca said, "Listen much and speak little." Do not rush to give your own opinions, and respect those of others. Nature, the universe, and life have given us 2 ears, and 1 mouth. Leonardo da Vinci bequeathed us a temporal wisdom. Learn to listen, and talk less. In other words, we should spend more time and effort listening to others than talking ourselves. By paying close attention to what others say, we can better understand their thoughts, feelings, and perspectives. Therefore, you have surely heard the saying, "You are master of what you say, and slave of what you say." Just as oysters open up under a full moon, revealing their insides to the crab, he who speaks too much, exposes himself, putting himself in the hands of the listener. It is a common fate for those who do not keep the precious gift of silence. In negotiations, silence is a master key. As Seneca rightly told us, nothing teaches as much as silence. Chris Voss, master negotiator, in his book Never Split the Difference, calls it dynamic silence. By placing pauses in the dialogue, he invites the other to fill the void with his words. This practice transcends the business sphere, entrusting dinners or intimate appointments. Silence can be revealing, as it is considered a gesture that demonstrates attention and sensitivity. The Stoics, in their quest for virtue, valued silence. Epictetus gave silence its own law, advising not to give more than necessary, because the human tongue, if not controlled, can become an uncontrolled beast that causes harm. Silence, in its deepest essence, is an art that goes beyond simply closing one's mouth. It requires quieting the mind, an increasingly elusive skill in our society today. Too often we are anxious to speak without taking the time to listen or think about what we are going to say. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that it is better to be silent, and be considered a fool, than to speak and dispel doubts. Definitely, in stillness we find the space to learn, and to really understand others. By practicing silence, we become exceptional conversationalists, capable of building solid relationships based on mutual trust. We constantly send messages and get frustrated if we do not receive an immediate response, as if we were apes jumping from branch to branch. But this is natural, although we criticize it. Zeno of Citium pointed out that we seek noise because it gives us the feeling of human companionship. In times immemorial, we needed the comfort and the din of the group in order to survive. Today, however, we are more overwhelmed than ever by noise, even affecting our mental maturation. A brilliant quote from Seneca illustrated that the most unhappy man is the one whose fullness of consciousness resides somehow outside himself. This is a symptom of the sick society in which we live. From the first moment of the day, we wake up looking for impulses and external stimuli, as if we were trying to fill and satisfy a void in our being. Imagine how dehumanizing and discouraging is the image we have today. Do you know what I mean? The first thing we do when we wake up is pick up the cell phone and check the unhealthy social networks, following the stories of others, without even looking at ourselves in the mirror. Undoubtedly, this is getting out of hand. It's not our fault. We are continually bombarded by messages, advertisements, notifications, and digital stimuli. We are in a crisis of immediacy. We have replaced the depth of writing a letter our beloved, the warmth of calling our best friend on the phone, and the courage to approach someone in the library, the subway, or a restaurant. All this has been replaced by the rush of sliding profiles, and sending superficial, meaningless messages. As Seneca said, life is very short, and the task of life is to extend it. Life is not extended by adding years, but by making each day count. Everything seems to have lost its meaning. And for this reason, I strongly advise you not to be part of this dehumanized, cursed, and toxic dynamic of social networks. We are empty beings, and completely absorbed, without energy, without core, without soul, without anything. And every day we wake up, we go in search of something external, as if we depend on something we cannot control. And that is really sad, not to say depressing. We stop looking outside, to cultivate the inside. We stop talking, to listen and learn. We stop participating, in order to contemplate, to see, and to observe. That is what silence gives us. As promised, let me share my experience of 7 days in complete serenity, along with its benefits and practical tips, as I tried to emulate the monastic life and the deep introspection of the monks, who were characterized by their vow of silence. I imagine what it would be like to experience, to maintain silence in the midst of our daily lives, interactions with family, friends, partners, and even supermarket clerks, or waiters. It was one of the most enriching experiences I have lived. Although I must confess that some words escaped me. It was much more challenging than I imagined, especially communicating with my partner, my parents, and other people in ordinary situations. Communicating in silence is quite complicated. However, it provided me with a lot of learning. For me, silence became an extraordinary experience that I will surely repeat. Why? Because I experienced a remarkable increase in my concentration and focus. All forms of anxiety, frustration, or worry about the past, or the future, simply dissipated by being in silence. I was able to have a deeper internal dialogue with myself, which gave me the leeway and reflection to analyze my responses, and unravel negative thought patterns. Reflections that we often don't have the opportunity to do when we speak, which is always fascinating. In addition, all kinds of superficial impulses lost strength. Because by remaining silent, I found the authentic ability to ask myself, is this what you really want? Or will you succumb to this desire? This certainly allowed me to have greater control over my actions. The silence provided me with the ability to examine negative emotions and thought patterns, which I was unaware were dwelling in me during the day. It was an internal dialogue with my subconscious, which can sometimes tend to deceive us. You think you don't have those patterns until you stop talking, and you are much more aware in the deep moment of reflection, where you can truly transform yourself. I have never reached this depth of introspection before, even in my most intense meditation practices. As Seneca told us, life without reflection is not worth living. It turned out to be an amazing and extremely enriching experience. Something that will happen to you too. I was astounded by the frequency with which people talked simply to fill the silence, forgetting Epictetus' valuable advice. We have 2 ears, and only 1 mouth, so we can listen more, and talk less. He remained calm, without articulating a word. He only smiled and nodded, following the path of serenity proposed by Marcus Aurelius, who said, "Take into account that men do not let themselves be carried away by persuasive speeches, but by what they feel when they listen to you." I encouraged active listening, and asked questions, and more questions. Given my curiosity to learn, the powerful act of being silent, of simply accepting and smiling at any dialogue, just as Socrates taught, where true wisdom lies in recognizing one's own ignorance. The words flowed incessantly as I remained silent, making no response whatsoever. It was truly extraordinary, and incredibly rewarding to witness. This is because you empower your intellect, and your mental richness as you learn to listen to yourself and act with the full capacity of your faculties. Thanks to the dichotomy of Stoic control, we live in a society where, due to our work, personal or family circumstances, we do not have the time to reflect, and consequently, to order our thoughts, which is, in short, a valuable tool that gives us the power of silence. Something curious, but true, is that you will notice that you will hardly have to use notes or mobile applications to write down small ideas that you previously forgot, which will significantly increase your mental clarity thanks to silence. I encourage you all to live this experience and to practice it every day. How? By dedicating minutes, hours, even complete blocks of time to total silence, without uttering a single word. For example, before going to bed. I also invite them to look for hobbies that immerse them in silence. It can be something as simple as doing puzzles or painting mandalas. You will notice how, in your daily life, your tone of voice will be much slower, calmer, and clearer, thanks to the fact that you focus more direct and clear messages to your listeners. Instead of talking for the sake of talking things, sometimes without sense. But it doesn't end there. You will notice how other people pay even more attention to you than before, because you will undoubtedly capture their interest. If you can submit to a vow of silence, you won't lose anything. It will simply be one more opportunity to discover yourself. As Marcus Aurelius used to say, don't strive to make others think like you. Focus on thinking like you. What habits do you put into practice to achieve it? Is there anything that prevents you from putting it into practice? If you liked this valuable content, don't forget to subscribe, like it, and share it with someone who could benefit from these teachings. I also leave you 2 videos that you might find interesting. Thank you very much for making it this far. And remember, happiness is personal. And see you in the next video.